I'm sure you can understand why our beloved parent company, Warner Brothers, has decided to make a sequel to the trilogy.
What?
They informed me they're going to do it with or without us.
People would always say to me, is there going to be another Matrix just on people on the street or... And I would think, no, absolutely not. Never in a million years.
One day I got I don't know if it was a text or an email.
It's Lana. Call me when you can.
How's it going? I'm thinking about. And I was like, what?
You're never going to believe it, but I wrote this script.
She basically, asked me how would I feel about that. I went, yes.
I literally went home and told my husband. I think I just started crying. I was just so excited about the possibility.
Yes.
After all these years, to be going back to where it all started. Back to the Matrix.
I never wanted to go back into the trilogy. I thought when it was done, and it was like so nice. Why would you ever touch it? And then personal things happened. I lost my parents. And all my life, struggling with gender and complicatedness of being a transgendered person in this society that is so hard on transgendered people, I use stories and imagination as a way to soothe myself and a way to live in the world that felt more comfortable. Books, fantasy was always super important to me through my whole life. And in the grief that I was experiencing with my parents dying, my brain one night just resurrected Neon Trinity, and it was instantly soothing. It's just like the way art is. It can really soothe us in times of pain. And then what was interesting was that my brain wanted to have them alive, but it wanted to do it in a way that was clever. And to make it somewhat more synonymous with my own life in the way that Warner Brothers has been trying to get Lily and I to make a Matrix sequel for years and years and years and years, and we kept saying, no, 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 not interested, not interested, not interested. And then suddenly that became a part of the story. And then the realness of that inside the fakeness of the Matrix, that became exciting.
Lana, Sasha, and I assembled around a table, and Lana brought quite a lot of ideas.
We started writing plot points on cards, just laying the cards on the table.
And for about a week or so, began to get the itch to turn these cards into scenes.
I would say, I'll take a card from this card to this card, and I'll write this.
We bring our scenes back, we read through them. Lana fits them into the larger schema of the film.
Some scenes are 7 pages. There should be 1. Some of them are even longer, some of them are shorter.
Ideas we thought in the early days might be really strong, but just don't belong in the movie. Or they mutate into other ideas, or we get a great scene in Act 3 that's gorgeous and has to be there, but this will negate or require changes earlier on in the film. So we work like that.
The idea would pass through everyone, just move within this imaginary space, which we started somehow calling the pit. And then quickly, a kind of terminology developed related to that. Like, people start saying, let me throw it into the pit, right? Let's spin it in the pit, and so on.
We just found it useful to avoid the adjective you. Once you start talking about your idea, or what you said, or what you think, that's just it's potentially sometimes the beginning of disharmony.
Because there's this energy that comes from this joining of the minds. It's not the sum, it's this energy that is created, and a sense of thinking with other people's minds.
We start writing, and we have this whole idea, and then suddenly energy just happens, and it starts evolving and changing, and things that you couldn't have imagined suddenly become possible only if you let go of all of the old ideas.
Is this old Matrix code?
We wanted elements from the trilogy back, but why do the same story? And why just do one more in a row?
It's not a 4th rectangle in a series of rectangles, but rather it's a rectangle that encompasses all previous rectangles.
Freeze! Do not move! We will shoot!
come into the movie into the modal. It's essentially a run-through of our first encounter with the Matrix world.
That was Lana's idea. When she came to us, this is the scene that she had in mind. They would start as a video game, and it would be kind of replicate the opening of the trilogy.
The modal in the film is a program that has been written by Thomas Anderson in the present day. It's based on his big hit, The Matrix trilogy of games, and we enter this modal with a curious young captain called Bugs, who has detected something that looks a little bit like the code from the beginning of the Neo story, which for them in the future is this mythical, legendary, quasi-messianic story.
We know the story. This is how it all began.
It's kind of self-referential, or it's self-referencing, but there's something different about it too.
Yeah.
You know, this idea of memory, fiction. And when does memory become a fiction, and does it matter?
So what's it like being a world-famous game designer? Must be amazing.
A lot of hours. Sometimes it is amazing. Most times, I don't know.
But you made The Matrix. Even I've heard of that.
Yeah, we kept some kids entertained.
So worth it?
I mean, I love the fact that Neo is now living in a world where The Matrix is known and is a thing, because that is our world. The Matrix is known and is a thing.
The packet in front of you has our focus group research. Inside, you'll find the breakdown, including key word association with the brand. The top two being originality and fresh.
There's this whole sequence where they're making the game of Matrix 4, so it's the idea and pressure of making a fourth Matrix in the script of the fourth Matrix. It's so meta.
Matrix is mind-born. Philosophy in shiny, tight PVC.
Yeah, ideas are the new sexy.
This is me writing my experience of the last 20 years of everybody telling me what the Matrix means.
Obviously, the Matrix is about
Trans-politics.
Crypto-fascism.
It's a metaphor
Of capitalist exploitation.
bullet time.
And I wanted to mock them. But I also want to suggest the magic of art, that it has all of these meanings, and all of those meanings are true.
We spent 5 months concepting this film. Lana, from early on, had ideas that she wanted this to look different. Similar to The Matrix, but not The Matrix.
You've got to remember that the basis of our story is that the first 3 films were games and not films. And so consequently, the look of a game could be different to the look of reality, and we're in reality. And although we have an essence of the Matrix, we're actually living in a real world. Although it's not the real world, it's the Matrix.
The art department, they were possibly the only department that didn't bring the legacy and the burden of it's the Matrix.
Yeah,
Right.
even though they were like the most precise about what we had done. And so they were, in some ways, the keeper of the old ways more than anybody else, but it was never precious.
Lana likes the idea of the red in the core, right? Yeah. But to keep the light off the back, we'll put some cables in front of that to make a little barrier between Seg's chair and the core.
Well, obviously we didn't want to lose the essence of the Matrix. However, the tonal colors are not quite as strong as they were originally in the Matrix. The first film was particular in the color contrast between the Matrix and the real world, whereas in our film it's far softer. There's not so much separation between the two worlds.
Lana has freed up the Matrix world in that it's not just green anymore. This time we've put a lot more color.
Am I crazy? We don't use that word in here.
Beautiful take, beautiful. You got it? Unstoppable.
One of the things that has been most interesting to me in this entire process is watching Lana's cinematic evolution. To see things going from very static and intentionally lit, everything being very much like a graphic novel, to what she does now, which seems to be following instinct more and being able to move so fluidly.
When I talked to Lana about her process, of making this film, she talked about being very, very strict in her first film. Knowing exactly every single shot that she was going to do before it was done, being very methodical, very meticulous about each and every frame of the movie.
There would be questions sometimes to them of like, well, how many SFX squibs do you want and where do you want them in the walls, which is a common question as you plan these things. And they would point to the storyboard and go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's where they are. So everything was sort of drawn up. Everything was very, very ordered.
Lily and I were very precise directors when we first began. It was a way to kind of feel like you had control over the day, all of the crazy circumstances. You wanted to be prepared and you wanted to know exactly what you were going to go after. And uncertainty in those days was much more complicated for me. I was not out of the closet yet, nor was she. And so uncertainty was something that just gave me so much intense anxiety around that I channeled my artist side into somebody who wanted to control every tiny little detail.
Back on Reloaded and Revolutions, we almost never left the studio. Very, very rarely. There was something about the controlled environment of a soundstage with lights that, are fixed and that could be there day in, day out, nothing changes. You don't have to deal with the variability of the weather or the position of the sun. Everything is meticulously planned and there when you need it.
In the beginning, I was terrified of the sun because you couldn't control it. It's so unpredictable. You never know what the sun is going to give you. You never know how it's going to bounce, what magic quantum thing it's going to bring to an image. And so I loved movie lights. I loved fake lights. And the trilogy is full of fake lights. It's fake lighting everywhere. And I liked a kind of flatness to light. I grew up in Chicago, and I think the grayness of Chicago made me really love the non-dimensionality of flat light. And there's funny things that are in The Matrix, like bullet time, which is this famous shot that goes around a person on the top of a building, but you never see the sun. It's like the one angle where you would start to sort of imagine where you would see the sun. The camera goes up, so you look down at the ground, and then it comes back and around. And then I met John Toll, and John Toll is this beautiful artist, and he taught me to love the sun. And loving the sun, that led me into loving uncertainty. And when an actor brings some magic to a moment in the sun and they all form this thing that you could not possibly imagine, that for me is like the greatest energy and the greatest thrill.
So now we have gone from, lighting plans, which, everyone used to pore over for days and days and days. Now the thing you pore over is the sun path map, right? Where's the sun? Where's the sun go? Where's it going to be between 11:15 and 11:18?
Waiting for a perfect light window in San Francisco and having the character look out like Smith once did. With Morpheus, look at it. Just look how perfect it is,
Every time I stand here, OMG.
So stunningly beautiful, the reflections of the sun and the buildings.
It's so perfect, it's gotta be fake.
And yet that's being presented as artificiality. So that's part of the mind bend now, too. It's like the Matrix is getting closer to home. On the first 3 Matrixes, my experience was the Wachowskis behind a monitor. But she's now an artist who's interested in natural light, who wants to be next to the camera, and who literally connects herself to the camera and becomes this other thing, which I've never seen before.
I want to be right next to the actor. I want to be right with the camera. I want to feel the camera. I want to feel and be. The camera's always rolling, I'm always moving, we're always looking, we're always changing. You're just trying to catch moments and catch beauty, and you see something and it's just there for a second, especially when the sun is out and blazing and it's perfect for 20 minutes, and you try to shoot an entire 6-page dialogue scene in just like these few minutes, and you capture wide shot, medium shot, close up, all the things you need in this improvisational way.
The setting gives you absolute freedom to put the camera wherever you want it, wherever you need it, and keep it moving or do whatever. Me and her together, you know, she can whisper in my ear, we go that way, we do that, we do the follow, you know, and everything happens very quickly.
And it required Daniele to be okay with me basically laying on him, which is like the Steadicam is already like this gigantic, humongous, heavy piece of equipment. And then like I would like just hang and drape and like be on top of him. And we became sort of a 4-legged creature.
She's also pulling focal length, so she can come in, come out. So she might start in a wide, come into a medium. She might pick up different things. Then when she's close, she'll start directing close-ups.
And I just loved it. I loved being able to be that close to everything and to be able to talk and be right there and make adjustments and touch.
Actually works. I think it's very effective, very efficient, I would say.
I'm not getting kind of formal idea, plan and shoot, review, is it super perfect? On the first 3 Matrix films, that idea of super perfect for me was born. Because I had the chance to train, prepare, go, and then review. So I could look at a playback and I could be a part of why we needed to do the 83 takes, because I wasn't super perfect. I kind of internalized that and wanted to be that. That's why I was there, right? The experience on Resurrections is that process is not available. But I'm a little more experienced than I was back then, and I went to that school, so I know what that is. So there are times where I don't necessarily need to see it to know if it was super perfect or not. But that's still what I'm going for. The action to me is expressing the character, and I think it's also part of the fun of the films. But it's definitely different, so it's not prepare, shoot, review. Now it's be ready, in the moment, go.
And headlight.
Cool. Take a tiny moment to see the headlight, feel the headlight, like, oh shit, you don't know, you know, and then decide.
The way that Lana works now is definitely the way that I like to work. It reminds me of being in like acting class and your teacher, you know, the teacher's throwing ideas at you. I love that kind of environment.
Thomas? You don't get to rehearse much. You're in it and you're going.
That's more.
She's definitely the most fascinating director I've ever worked with. The way that she runs a set, she doesn't cut. We do long-running takes, 20, 30 minutes of just one scene without cutting. And I like that because it keeps the rhythm of the set. And it keeps you on your toes because you think it could be their coverage, but she could just swivel the camera around and suddenly it's your coverage. So you have to really be on your A game.
You can do the whole scene, then do the whole scene again, then just do the second part of the scene, say this line again, say it a different way, move the camera over here, now we're gonna say it like this, and you're just all over the place. It's just unusual for any filmmaking that I've done before.
There are as many people who believe you saved Zion as believe you collaborated with the machines to build a bigger, better Matrix.
Still, there's a lot that hasn't changed. She's very specific on how she wants to hear certain lines, certain energy, certain tone.
Yeah, you almost know it's gonna happen.
So she likes to try different approaches to scenes and to lines. And that's always been the case, where it's just like, no, try it a little more gruff now,
And at the same time, there is a freedom which was extraordinary to discover, a freedom in Lana that was completely different. It's a different way of filming, and it's a different way of dealing with the fights. It's a lighter way of making cinema. It's something that doesn't have the weight of how things were done in Australia in 2001.
She doesn't have a shot list at all. I don't think she knows what she's gonna do until she shows up. She has a kind of confidence in herself as a filmmaker, knowing that she can pull off the most technically difficult sequences imaginable. I mean, car chases and helicopter attacks and huge fight scenes, she doesn't storyboard it.
On action, it goes straight into the shot.
Yeah, I think on action, you guys just look at each other and...
She wants to get inspired on set, the way people are moving and the way the light is. And as an actor, it's really exciting to work in that way because we're all figuring it out in the moment, and that's really fun.
Now that's a very confusing way, it would seem, to make a film with this much magnitude. Because it just feels intrinsically like with 70 stunt people in a small room that everything would have to be storyboard drawn. Every shot would have to be done in animatics where they put them in computers already and you can see exactly what it's gonna look like and you're just banging out the content. But it doesn't happen like this.
Set. And 2, 1, go.
You plan, but you don't like 100% go with the plan. Sometimes you go with the feel. It's kind of hard, difficult for actors because she may change anytime. So you have to be prepared.
Ready and action.
So me and Keanu, we all figure out you have to like 120 prepare. So you plan to do this, okay, I do this. All right, I can do all this, no problem. But now you have to training more. If there's something change, you already been training. It's okay, we can train like change right away. So yeah, I think Keanu can do that, no problem.
It's so cool to see that every fight scene in a movie has a different taste, visual-wise. So every fight scene is 100% different. And that's cool, you don't see that in most movies, because they stick to one dogma. Every fight is a scene, has to mean something. Also, every punch has a meaning. It has to affect you.
With Lana, she's like, okay, everything what you're doing has to be a meaning. Yeah. It's not just a punch, it's not just a walk over there. You have to be very aware with everything, because it's coming a note from Lana and then you have to adapt or react.
Yes, 100%.
Or it will change, like, oh, maybe it makes more sense if Keanu will be on the chair or on the table, and everything changed. It was intense when we had the night shoots in San Francisco. We had the car chase and then all the swarms came.
It's planned, so we have an idea, and then all the swarms are just coming, and it's kind of an improvisation. And that's what I learned from Lana, and what I also love about her is that she starts seeing things in the moment, in the process, and then she is saying always the phrase, yeah, what we learned from that. Okay, cool. So and then we go further, and this kind of work style and flow is harsh sometimes for people because you get kicked out of your comfort zone. But this is what I like.
Thing that you never get on movies like this is this improv style, right? In fact, it's gone the other way. All the movies that The Matrix is the mother of, now they all shoot in a green box. The thing that we did 20 years ago, they all do now, and that's kind of why they all look exactly the same. So I think when this film comes out, people are just gonna go, that's not The Matrix.
I couldn't have done it any other way when I was that young. Lily and I couldn't have made it any other way. But now I know so much about every single aspect of filmmaking. I can improvise in a way that allowed us to shoot this wild, crazy chase with 1,000 extras that Warner Brothers is like out of their minds. It's, you know, you can't do this, it'll never do, you'll never be able to do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And we just said, you know, we don't do it like that anymore. We don't make previs, and we shot it in 6 nights.
We literally went away while we were waiting for darkness to fall, and we went to a restaurant. We said, Well, they're all back there wondering what we're going to do, so why don't we map it out? So we had a napkin in the restaurant.
It's like a joke.
It was like a joke. You know, and we drew the cars and the helicopters, and then we went back to them, and then we go, here it is, this is what we're doing tonight.
One of the great scores of all time, in my opinion, is the Matrix score, of the trilogy score. I think it's fantastic music, and what's particularly fantastic about it is that then it was one of the first, if not the first, score that so implemented electronic music and connected it with substantial late modern orchestral music. A big orchestra met massively intense, high-octane production electronic music. And that fusion was fresh and had not been done much. It started a movement, I think, and I was part of that movement. So now it is about paying tribute to it and yet free it a bit from its patterns, because it was made for that film that had a different stylistic frame, you know, a very solid frame, while this one has more of a fluid frame, you know. It's like, seems like open in every kind of direction, which needs to be represented in the music, of course. It was really nice. Can we jump to the next 1:30 to the other section? The pre-scoring, people don't understand. Why would you want music before you film? And I would always say, well, why would you not want it, you know? I became a film composer only because in the beginning, when I was a filmmaker and we didn't have any money for films, you know, we put everything in those films and then, you know, they're done, they're filmed, and you sit in the editing room and you go, oh, where are we going to get the music from? And there was no way to...
I'll just make it myself.
No, but I mean...
It's an amazing cue.
No, it was really because we couldn't afford to ask even anybody. And I realized that I had actually music in my mind. I had it all the time, and I carried it around. And I mean, that was my short film times. I said, well, let's try it myself. So I tried it, and it was actually a super satisfying process. And I discovered that actually music and the way into the music is something that makes me understand what kind of film I want to make. And that led to this process that I don't want to sit there at the end of shooting with the material and not have any music at hand that's not already planned for the film. So I developed this method which some people do but most don't, that we have substantial composing sessions and recording sessions prior to shooting. And I introduced Lana to the method.
The Tickver method, trademark.
Well, it's true emancipation as a filmmaker. You know, when you get to learn Tom's method, right? Because like for those people who don't know, when you sit down, like Tom was just saying, at the end of shooting everything, and then you decide on the music, you go and you magpie from everyone else's other scores that have been previously published, and try and attach it to your scene, which is an insanity when you know this method.
When the editor sits down in editorial, they work with music that has been conceptually conceived for this project, which doesn't mean it's done, you know, it's not final, but he doesn't take elements from anything else. We have a big pool of directions we can go with this material.
It's like everything that's come before to this present, and it's being synthesized and practiced in a way that you have to be a master filmmaker to make a film like this, period.
It's such a testament to Lana and her vision and her brilliance and the team that she has around her that we're able to do this and be in this, doing this together. I mean, every day I'm so grateful.
The Matrix changed our lives, and it taught us something really profound about making art. Making art is transformational. If you bring your heart and everything in it, it changes you. And so we wanted to come back at the end and have this sort of testament to what we've learned. That's what's in this film.